from the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast.
A new report from USDA and fresh drama for markets. In agribusiness, checking on cattle.
At some point, it needs to send a signal to slow down, guys.
The Packer TV checks on Hurricane Irma damage in Florida produce, and a journey to the top has this South Dakota farmer reworking his long-term legacy.
AgDay, presented by the Chevy Silverado. High-strength steel for high-strength dependability.
Good morning, I'm Clint Griffiths. We'll see how grain markets respond this morning after the Ag Department said the corn and soybean crops got even bigger over the past month. Corn production coming in at 14.2 billion bushels. That's 1% higher than August. The national average yield was also pushed higher, about a half bushel. USDA now expecting 169.9 bushels to the acre. Harvested acreage was unchanged from last month. Now, soybean production, it's forecast at a record 4.43 billion bushels, up 1% from August. USDA expecting yields to average 49.9 bushels per acre. That's up a half bushel. USDA didn't change harvested acres as it remains a record high at 88.7 million acres. For comparison, USDA's corn yield estimate of 169.9 is nearly 3 bushels higher than Pro Farmer's estimate of 167.1 bushels to the acre. Pro Farmer's national estimate is based in part on the results of the Farm Journal Crop Tour, but it also includes data and analysis from states outside the tour area. The Ag Department's soybean yield estimate also higher than Pro Farmer's soybean forecast of 48.5 bushels to the acre. With higher production estimates, USDA also boosting 2017-18 ending stocks to 2.3 billion bushels. Soybean ending stocks were unchanged at 475 million bushels. Now, old crop corn ending stocks for 2016-17 coming in at 2.3 billion. Old crop soy hitting 345 million bushels.
You know, now we're sitting here with more supply and dealing with how we're going to get rid of that supply. So we look at the carryovers, and on the new crop carryover for corn, that increased the projected supply for 2017-18 at the end of that marketing year. But on soybeans, we held steady with where carryover was last month. So despite the bigger crop estimate, USDA offset that with enough use to equal it out, and we end up with an equal steady carryover number there.
Now, last year, better than expected yields helped some farmers out yield these lower commodity prices. So could ag see a repeat performance in 2017? Well, in an early exclusive from Farmer Mac, economist Jackson Takish telling AgDay there's one main difference between this year and last: the amount of grain sitting in storage.
This year, I think we might have a little bit lower quantities and a little bit lower price maybe than last year, so that's going to hurt revenue. However, as you mentioned, in a lot of these communities, there was a pretty large carryover from the 2016 crop. So they're able to sell corn and soybeans and wheat and all those crop commodities into 2017, which helps offset some of those cash flows. I think that's going to help out this year when maybe the cash flows get a little tight in the fall. They will still have some of that old crop to be able to liquidate and bolster their farm profitability in 2017 just from that 2016 crop.
Here's a chart showing just how burdensome the carryover is in certain states. The green diamond representing the 5-year average. Now, the orange line, ending stocks, according to USDA's last quarterly report. It shows corn stocks well above average levels in Illinois, Iowa, Minnesota, and Nebraska. And farmers in Illinois and Minnesota facing the biggest burdensome stock situation for beans. USDA also boosting its cotton forecast as it expects a record yield there. The Ag Department expecting a 6% increase from its August estimates. It's now calling for a 21.8 million bales, yields up 16 pounds per acre with a record high 908 pounds per acre. The two powerful hurricanes in a 2-week span also caught the attention of NASS. USDA says Harvey made data collection impossible in southeast Texas and southwest Louisiana, so the agency will collect harvested acreage data on a host of crops this month for the October report. Now, as far as Irma, NASS will be collecting harvest info in the weeks ahead for states in the southeast, including Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, and Alabama. That information will come out with that October report. Mike Hoffman joining us now with more from the farm and today's crop comments. Good morning, Mike.
Good morning, Clinton. The first picture may be what's a common sight in the southwestern portion of Georgia. Michael Hancock says cotton is winding and twisted up in spots. Farmers around his area are starting to assess the crop damage. And from Baldwin, Illinois, Danny Brewer says corn harvest is flying by. That's in the southwestern portion of the state. They started a week ago. He describes conditions in his area as dry, and drier. Callan Ballmiller is a farmer in the Golden Triangle of Montana. He's busy cutting safflower. So far, he says it's an okay crop with decent quality. The biggest challenge is the smoke. Wildfires burning make for hazy days. And taking a look at the root zone moisture, turning drier like we pointed out. Illinois, Iowa, very wet, obviously in Florida and some of those other areas. We'll take a closer look at that map, but have your forecast coming up. First, here's some hometown temps.
Ever wake up wondering what does today's weather have in store? Well, with weather updates, it delivers the local forecast right to your cell phone each morning to make preparing for the day easier. Just text Weather 6 to 31313 to get started.
The state of Arkansas moving forward in limiting the use of dicamba in 2018. The Pesticide Committee of the Arkansas Plant Board adopting a recommendation to only allow dicamba be used in field from January 1st through April 15th. Officials say they don't expect the ban to last forever, but they do expect more crop testing to take place in 2018. The recommendation now needs approval from the full plant board, the Arkansas governor, and the Arkansas Legislative Council. Both Monsanto and BASF, which make the newly approved dicamba-based formulations, disagree with the decision, saying it will put Arkansas farmers at a disadvantage. We've talked a lot about grains. Up next, we'll switch over to the cattle market with Alan Brugler. And later, we're off to South Dakota, where this top producer of the year winner is still striving for success, but the reason behind his pursuits have new meaning. In agribusiness, plenty of action at the CME Group in Chicago following Tuesday's reports from USDA. Let's see how things close from our friends on the floor.
The first thing we want to talk about is what the overall results of the USDA report were, and of course they were well overstocked and well over bearish into these markets, and I think that's kind of the reaction that you're seeing in these markets, is that the USDA had really got anybody into fear. I think that, you know, the possible, they're up in the 174, 175 bushel per acre, and of course that became a little bit ridiculous, forcing prices into ridiculous levels, lows. I don't know how much more room you'd had to the downside anyways. One of the things you have to look at when you're looking at these spaces is where's the possible potential downside. So what we'd be looking to do is to be a buyer, and we want to buy support at any level. And as they come down, if they come down lower, we want to look for opportunities to buy. I believe that you've got a much better chance to push to the upside. I think we still have a chance to get back over that $4 level going into the end of the year versus that they're going to take them down. But at the end of the day, I think you look to be a buyer. That's the way I see it. This is Todd Horwitz coming here from the floor of the CME Group in Chicago.
Grains may have had a struggle, but cattle markets continue to hold their own here in 2017. Can it last, giving the rising supplies? Tyne Morgan asks a question from the road in today's analysis.
Here now with Alan Brugler. Alan, when we look at this cattle market, it seems just like the supply situation is growing. Does this supply story continue to play out within the markets?
Yeah, it definitely does. If you look at the beef, pork, and poultry production estimates for the fourth quarter, they're all the largest in a number of years. I believe beef production back to 2007. At the same time, you're expanding hogs. You've got more hog packing plants coming online. Producers are trying to feed those. So the market's got its job cut out for it to move all that inventory. And we're still in the rising phase of the cattle cycle. At some point, it needs to send a signal to slow down, guys. And so we think cyclically there should be a bottom here in September, October, and then get a little bounce in year end, just from the trading cycle perspective. But supply-wise, we need to keep those exports moving, because if the domestic consumer has to eat it, price has to go down.
You said a little bit of a bounce heading into the end of the year, but not a big bounce?
No, well, it's going to depend on how low we get first. We have a head and shoulders top on the weekly chart. The objective is 102, $102. We were trading cash 105 last week, so that's still in range. If we go any below that, then you'll get a larger bounce afterwards, I think.
So, I mean, you want demand to pick up significantly at this point.
Yeah, we should see bigger demand. We saw some excellent beef export sales last week. The weaker dollar's helping us with that. But that's the key here, is get the price cheap enough, put the product on sale, and get the consumer to buy a little bit more.
All right. Thank you so much, Alan. We appreciate it. Stay with us. We need to take a check of weather, and then we'll be back on Ag Day.
To talk to Alan about his ag market professional services, call Brugler Marketing and Management at 402-697-3623 or visit his website, www.bruglermarketing.com.
Welcome back. Mike Hoffman here, looking at the root zone moisture map. And of course, you know, that area in the Corn Belt, pretty interesting, pretty dry, but Southern California, pretty wet for the historical average.
Right, compared to normal, it's very wet for this time of the year. Kind of amazing there. Obviously, we expect it in Florida from Irma, but that is heading toward the north. And you can see, besides that really dry area, Illinois into Iowa, parts of Missouri, it's a little bit dry up and down most of the plain states, as you can see there. A little bit wet in places in the Great Lakes, but not overly so. And we have a lot of areas out west that are either very wet or very dry, but that's kind of typical for this time of the year. There's the weather map. There's the remnants of Irma, pretty close to the boot heel of Missouri, southern Illinois area. Starting to now take off toward the northeast. We'll continue to see that moving through parts of southern Indiana, southern Ohio, northern Kentucky. Those will be the areas that get the majority of the rain, but there will be showers pretty far north and south of that system as well. Afternoon variety showers and thunderstorms, kind of typical out west. And as I step off the map just a little bit, we'll continue to watch Jose. It's kind of taken that big loop that it was doing, and now it's starting to head back toward the west. So it's still a potential threat next week for the East Coast. Heading through the nighttime hours tonight, you can see that rain with the remnants of Irma moving into the eastern portions of the Ohio Valley. During the day tomorrow, it continues to track off toward the northeast. Next front will cause some showers and storms from the western Great Lakes, northern Minnesota, back into parts of the northern Rockies. Taking a look at precipitation estimate over the past 24 hours and adding in the next 36, you can see that the majority is going to be with the remnants of Irma, really from the Tennessee Valley, Ohio Valley, into parts of the northeast. We'll also see some areas across the northern tier of states, as we pointed out. High temperatures this afternoon under Irma only in the 60s, kind of cool for this time of the year. 80s and 90s up and down the high plains, even some triple digits in the desert southwest. Lows tonight going to be on the cool side throughout most of the Corn Belt, with lots of 60s, maybe some upper 50s, still 70s and 80s in Florida and parts of Texas. Highs tomorrow afternoon. That warmth starts to come back east as Irma moves eastward, with the 60s showing up in the eastern Ohio Valley for highs. That's all because of the trough from Irma, and you can see in our jet stream that will finally get taken off toward the northeast. Then we have a ridge developing for much of the east, big trough out west, kind of a flip-flop in the weather pattern there. That's a look across the country. Now let's take a look at some local forecasts. First of all, for Boise, Idaho, a mix of sun and clouds today, high temperature of 86 degrees. Ponca City, Oklahoma, sunny and rather warm, high near 90. And finally, Lansing, Michigan, clouds and sunshine, maybe a shower, high of 75.
Surveying crop damage in Florida from our partners over at the Packer. Well, that's next. And later, this South Dakota top producer has new hope for the future of his farm. On the Packer TV, Hurricane Irma's path across the state of Florida brings with it damage to both citrus and vegetables. Now, according to the editors at the Packer, Florida citrus and early planted vegetables in South Florida were damaged in Hurricane Irma over the weekend. Growers are just now starting to get a handle on that damage. The Florida Fruit and Vegetable Association says they don't have an exact loss or damage estimate yet, but from talking with citrus growers, many groves saw heavy fruit drop, with citrus falling to the ground. Other groves are now flooded and waiting for waters to recede. On the vegetable side, planting was just getting started. Most of the damage is to bedding and irrigation tape. Officials say there may be gaps in vegetable production later this year. The United Fresh Produce Association raising red flags over a newly introduced legislation in D.C. that would eventually require all employers use the E-Verify system when hiring. United Fresh arguing that a comprehensive immigration solution for agriculture and its workers should happen first. It says that could include moving falsely documented workers to legal status where appropriate and creating a new guest worker program. Now, those in support of expanded E-Verify say the bill ensures jobs only go to legal workers. Up next, we're catching up with a top producer, including how his farm and his future has changed since our last visit.
In the Country, sponsored by Kubota. See the hardest working tractors in ag at Kubota.com or visit your local Kubota dealer today.
Every year, our corporate cousins at Top Producer Magazine honor a successful farmer with the title of Top Producer of the Year. AgDay is now partnering with the magazine to follow up with our former candidates in a new series called Journey to the Top, in hopes of seeing how their operations have evolved. Our first visit is to Gregory, South Dakota, and the farm of the 2014 Top Producer winner, Lee Lubers.
So this is a little over 100 years old.
Farming has always been a legacy-based business for Gregory, South Dakota producer Lee Lubers.
Our great-grandfather was the first generation that farmed in America.
The fourth-generation farmer prides himself on his roots.
He came over and he came through Ellis Island.
Valuing the farm's foundation and its potential for the future.
And we always knew it was never just a piece of paper. It can't be agreements and trust and whatnot. There's got to be a culture behind it.
Since the Lubers brothers, Terry and Lee, won the Top Producer of the Year award in 2014, the operation has drastically transformed. Both brothers got married and started their own families. 3 little girls, set to someday take over the farm.
Couldn't love 10 sons more than our 3 girls. That's what my brother and I say every day.
And now the 5th generation is having a big influence on the business, spanning 20,000 acres of corn, soybeans, and winter wheat.
We know our daughters can run this farm not just as good as we do, but better, and take it in new directions, and we're excited about it.
The Lubers are already taking the succession plan to the next level, working on multiple trust funds, knowing the girls will have flexibility.
Our farm will stay together as a working unit. They can be absentee owners. They can be involved in production every day. You're dancing.
Changes that include triumphs.
That's where you can see the marks in the hail.
And disappointments.
We're next year country, you know. We'll just keep going ahead, and in 2018 it'll be better.
Drought plagued the 2017 growing season throughout much of South Dakota. The first rain in months brought hail.
And it was about 80-mile-an-hour winds, and it just came sideways.
The result is hard to accept, but easy to calculate.
There's about 1,200 acres in this field, and it took about 2/3 of the yield off of it.
The Lubers were fortunate enough to combine all of their winter wheat during this tough summer. Others were not so lucky.
We have friends that would have had 10,000 to 15,000 acres of wheat to cut, and they cut 1,000 to 3,000. Some of them never even fired up a combine this year.
When drought hits and net farm income is down, Luber says he's leaving emotion out of the marketing plan.
And a drought is psychologically crippling. You know, it can be if you choose it to be that way, but we leave emotion out of it. And it's numbers. That's what we're going to work with.
That's why he says it's important to keep the inventory he has secure. The family has replaced old bins with new ones, now with a total capacity of about 1.5 million bushels. They're some of the first producers in the upper Midwest to install a bin monitoring system. It can check temperature and humidity while saving power.
I could be in Chicago in the airport, and it'll notify me in my smartphone which bin kicks in, which fan.
It can hydrate the crop as well.
We're far out west. The pods are getting dry enough, we're getting 8-9% beans. We can put them in the bin and hydrate them back up to 13%.
For this operation,
you want to go check field?
Change is constant, the way the Lubers prefer it.
And we've always embraced that. We're not the same operation we were 5, 10, 20 years ago, and we're also not the same people.
That way.
That way?
Preserving yet evolving, keeping the farm moving and standing for the future. Reporting in Gregory, South Dakota, I'm Betsy Gibbon.
Pretty cool story. Thanks, Betsy. And you can read more about the Lubers operation in the latest issue of Top Producer Magazine. That's all the time we have this morning. We're sure glad you tuned in. Start your day with us. For Betsy Gibbon, Mike Hoffman, and Tyne Morgan, I'm Clinton Griffiths. Have a great day in farm country.
AgDay is powered by Ram Trucks, America's longest lasting pickups.